Good morning, everyone. Thank you, and welcome to Canadian Stone's online webinar. I'd like to thank everyone for signing up and joining us today. For this presentation, your microphones will remain muted. However, there is an option to enter in any questions that you might have, and please feel free to do so. The presentation today is going to be performed by Steve Trippy. He's the Area Sales Manager from Boral Stone. We will try and get to some questions at the end of the broadcast, and for those of you who don't get your questions answered, we will do our best to contact you via email and follow up with you at that point. Again, thanks for joining us, and Steve, if you could be so kind, please take it away.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you, Chris, for that wonderful introduction. I also want to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy schedules today to join us on this webinar to learn more about manufactured stone and specifically how we are designing commercial projects versus residential projects in 2020. So I work for Boral in the Boral Stone division. If you're not familiar with Boral, Boral is a worldwide manufacturer of building materials. In North America, Boral manufactures siding, trim, and shutters. We also manufacture brick. We manufacture windows, roofing materials, and then, of course, manufactured stone. I work in the manufactured stone division for Boral. You might recognize some of those nationally known brands there. As Chris mentioned, I work in the stone division and I support CSI and their network of over 500 dealers in the specification, installation, and sales support of the Cultured Stone brand and the Pro Stone brand all across Canada. If you haven't in a while, you may want to jump onto the Canadian Stone website, CSI, allthingsstone.com. Take a look at some of their resources. They've got a vast information supply there. They've also got links to the Boral Cultured Stone websites as well as the Pro Stone websites. If you haven't taken a look at those websites in a while, Pro Stone will look like this. Our Cultured Stone website will look like this, with also a vast knowledge of inspirational pictures, products, resources, and information for you. Just a quick review real quick before we get into our presentation. We've added a couple of new products for 2020. The new dry stack leadstone panel, which is a 6-inch by 20-inch panel and a 6-inch by 24-inch panel, lends itself well to commercial applications. We'll talk more about modular panels here in just a few minutes. A couple of other things that we added is we added some larger format products and additional colors to the cast fit line. We added the Stanhope textured cast fit in a nominal 12 by 24. We're going to talk about large format tiles here towards the end of the AIA presentation, so this will be applicable to what we're talking about today. We also added the carbon color to the cast fit line, and that's in an 8 by 16 and a 12 by 24 format. A couple other quick additions to the line, and then we'll get into our presentation. In our sculpted ashlar, we added our popular Echo Ridge color. In the cultured brick veneer, we added the carbon color, and then we were asked to add a very light color into the hewn stone line, and that's an Arctic white, which is very popular right now. So, designing commercial projects with manufactured stone masonry. This is an AIA course. If you need your AIA credits, please get with the team at Canadian Stone, CSI, and make sure that they've got your AIA number so that we can get you proper credit. This presentation is copyrighted by Boral Stone. Our learning objectives today with regards to manufactured stone is we're going to take a look at the benefits of manufactured stone, and we're going to examine the manufacturing process of how manufactured stone is produced. We're also going to take a look at some advancements in manufactured stone veneer as they have moved forward in 2020 with regards to some code changes, some installation changes, and some things that are important to the architectural and design community. We're also going to discuss some manufactured stone veneer types, and we're going to review some important project planning steps so that you guys can include all of the information that you guys need in your specifications to have successful installations. And we're also going to analyze some key details and benefits of large dimensional stone, manufactured stone. So let's get into it. Chapter 1, what is manufactured stone veneer? Manufactured stone veneer is commonly called MSV, or sometimes it's occasionally called architectural or faux stone. This material is made by mixing Portland cement, sand aggregates, and water together with iron oxide pigments to produce a finished product. Manufactured stone veneer is extremely lightweight when we're comparing it to other materials out there. It has to be, by requirement of ASTM C1670, it must be under 15 pounds, and in dimensions, it can be no thinner than 5/8 and no thicker than 2 5/8 in thickness. We use all manufactured stone, both interior and exterior, in all types of climates. So how do we make it? We take a master mold that is typically carved in stones to produce a finished product. So we have master craftsmen that are out there chipping away, making these mold shapes. This is the master mold to produce the type of look that we want for our end product. Once that master mold is produced, then we're going to make some type of production mold over the top of that, which is what we're going to pour our materials into. Manufacturers use many different types of molds depending upon the expense of the product, the way that they want the product to look, and their end result. And those can be latex, rubber, polyurethane, silicone, etc., to get the type of look that they want. This type of material that you're looking at here, this is a production mold for a modular, or what's called a panel stone, which we'll talk about more here as we get further into the presentation. So after we make the mold, we apply some type of color to the mold, and that type of color is a pigment. It's an iron oxide pigment. Sometimes that's a liquid, and sometimes it's a powder, and sometimes it's a combination of both. That can be either hand applied, like what you're seeing here in the picture, which is typically done for more of a realistic or artistic look, or it can be done by a computer or a hand sprayer. Just depends on the manufacturing process that the particular manufacturer is and has in production. After we do that, we apply our lightweight mix of concrete, and then it gets screeded either by hand or by machine or by both. And that gives us our finished product. In this case, a piece of panelized manufactured stone veneer. Stone types. There are many different types of stone out there, especially in manufactured stone. We are able to create some looks that you can't get with natural stone. As you see there in the pictures, we can manufacture anything from individual stones to panelized systems to large formats, and even the very popular brick looks. So manufactured stone versus natural stone. Depending upon what part of the country you are in, manufactured stone veneer is typically going to cost less than natural stone when it's put up into the wall. May not be the case if you're sitting right next to a quarry in terms of raw materials, but by the time you install it by the proper methods, it's typically going to be more than manufactured stone up in the wall. Manufactured stone is more streamlined, and it's a more cost-efficient installation with regards to waste factor. There's not as much scrap on manufactured stone because pretty much every piece of material that comes out of the box gets used, where in natural stone, not everything gets used. And then manufactured stone veneer typically goes up faster than natural stone, simply because you're fitting natural pieces as opposed to something that we manufactured. So let's take a look at the different types of manufactured stone that's out there. There is individual stones. These are stones that are individual and put up on the wall so that you create a different type of look than the panelized system. Each piece is individual. What this does is it allows us the greatest design flexibility in terms of mixing and matching colors. We can mix and match different size stones, and gives us that ability to create custom unique blends and looks without creating custom colors. This project here shows a blending, an on-site blending, where we took two different products and you can blend those products together to create an entirely different type of stone. So rather than create a new texture or profile, you can take two different materials from a manufacturer and blend those together on site to create a custom look. This can be done for both commercial and or residential projects. The benefits of using single piece stones is it gives the look of a full bed depth stone without being a full bed depth stone. So you get the aesthetics of full bed depth without having to use full bed depth stone. This works great, especially for commercial projects. Modular stone. In our example where we showed you how the manufactured stone veneer was produced in the molds, that was a modular product, meaning that it is like a panelized system. So it's typically 4 to 6 inches in height by random lengths based on the manufacturer's specifications. The benefits to some of the modular is it's a very fast installation, especially for commercial projects, because there's no grouting. You basically get onto the job site and install your product. So it installs much faster than a tight fit individual stone or a regular installation where you have to come back and grout it. So it works great for commercial applications. Some of the other benefits is it is about 1/3 less than natural stone in terms of installation costs and to the job site. The packaging expedites the job site setup, so there's no comparison in terms of getting to the job site, being able to get right into a box of manufactured stone rather than having to shift through natural stone products. Accents and details. When we're comparing manufactured stone to natural stone, there may not be as many accent and detail pieces available for natural stone. So manufactured stone has come up with all kinds of sills, caps, and electrical outlets and boxes, especially for commercial applications to give that finished look. All of these pieces can be used in commercial and in residential applications. Quality in manufacturing. When we manufacture our own products as manufacturers, we're able to control that manufacturing process. Packaging becomes important because manufacturers want to make sure that the packaging is part of your materials specification. This is going to ensure that stone arrives to your guys' job sites intact and ready to go. You can also specify in your specifications, if you'd like, either small or large box quantities based on your job site conditions. When we're comparing some materials that are out there and you're comparing some manufactured stones to others, sometimes you'll get some rust spots where the aggregate quality control was not controlled properly by the manufacturer. You want to make sure that you're working with a well-known manufactured stone producer who's got quality controls in place. Sometimes with poor manufacturing, you'll get an example of the top left picture there. Those are air bubbles. That was probably not properly shook when it came down the assembly line. All the bubbles didn't come out, and therefore it's going to arrive out on your job site like that if it isn't cooled out during the packaging process. So the vibration was an inadequate mix control. So the solution there is to make sure that you have quality controls in place, work with a well-known manufactured stone veneer company. Some other things to look out for lower quality manufacturing processes. Sometimes this is regional instead of national manufactured stone veneer companies, is they don't have the same number of molds. So when we looked at those production molds earlier in the presentation, the more production molds you have, the more you have the ability to create more individual looking type stones for a more natural and authentic appearance. So if you take a look at this picture here, this is a producer that probably has very few molds in production. And if you look at the white circles and the red circles, you'll notice a lot of repeat stones, which doesn't create quite as good of an appearance as a well-known manufacturer that may have a large number of molds in their fleet. Sometimes you get some stone duplication. This is on a corner here where you got the exact same pieces that were installed side by side. Now, normally that wouldn't happen, and this is an extreme case, but this is an example probably of a manufacturer that has very few masters to support its production. So too few molds, and sometimes you'll get this particular look out on your job site. Make sure that when you're specifying your projects that you request confirmation from a manufacturer that they've got and have availability of a large number of master mold fleet. If you take a look at this picture, this is a picture of manufactured stone versus natural stone. If you manufacture your stone to have a high quality look, it's very hard to tell it from one to the other on which one is the manufactured stone versus which one's the natural stone. In this case, the manufactured stone is in the gray box at the bottom. Chapter 1, if there's any questions, if you want to enter those questions in, we'll try and get to those questions as quickly as we can at the end of the presentation. Chapter 2, let's take a look at some of the advancements that we've had in manufactured stone veneer over the last several years. Some of these have been in the way that we install the product. Some of it has been in recycled content, adding more recycled content as manufacturers. And some of it just has to do with the way that the product is manufactured in general. One of the advancements that we've had in recent years is installation over continuous insulation. So now manufactured stone can be applied over continuous insulation. So if you've got projects that are out there where you want to add an additional layer of insulation because you're trying to meet certain R values, you can do that now with manufactured stone veneer. The key is that we need to make sure that when we apply our materials with the metal lath through a traditional metal lath installation method, that we're going through your thickness that you've specified for your insulation into the wood or metal frame studs. So as manufacturers, we can help you, and most of us have technical departments that can, if you're specifying a project with continuous insulation, we can tell you how many screws or anchors that you're going to need and the length of those anchors that you need based upon the continuous size insulation that you're going to use. So this is a recent development. We haven't always been able to go over the top of continuous insulation. The key though, once again, making sure that we have the long enough anchors to get through our metal lath and into your stud system. When we take a look at designing for success and some advancements, we also talked about how we are adding more recycled content as manufacturers. We're pulling materials regionally as close as we can to the manufacturing plant. A lot of the manufacturing plants are using reclaimed water. They're using low emitting materials. We are, as manufacturers, doing things that we can do to create products that are healthier for the environment, have more recycled content, and better overall in terms of quality. Let's take a look at some of the building codes. When we talk about the building codes, we always refer to the NCMA MSV guide. So this is the National Concrete Masonry Association, and it's their guide. If you haven't seen this guide, you can pick one of these guides up through most of your manufacturers' websites or going to the NCMA direct. This is the guide that's going to talk about all of the different ASTM codes that you need to have specified within your commercial projects. It's going to have all of your detailed drawings for the most part on pretty much anything from flashings to how to install different types of products side by side, and all of those little details that you're going to need. So I would suggest going out and grabbing one of these NCMA guides. You can download it right to your computer and keep it on your computer for whenever you need it. So we're going to cover the ASTM C1780. So when we're referring to any installation methods, that's always the installation method, and this is where it comes from, this particular guide. So building codes. When we're talking about specifications and you are putting into your commercial specifications, we want to make sure that we're following the manufacturer's installation recommendations. So as long as you put back in that particular building code, the ASTM standard, we are following and we are compliant with all warranties and installation information. So as a specifier, you want to make sure that you're covered on your commercial jobs, especially by making sure that we have that verbiage in your specifications. And if you're not familiar with that, you can certainly ask your local rep to help you if you need some clarification. So building codes, when we talk about some of the advancements, there's also the ES report. This is an ICC ES evaluation report that a lot of the manufacturers will take their products through that proves that we've got a proper precast stone veneer. There's 5 key acceptance criteria in order to get an AC 51 recommendation. So you have to go through certain raw materials that are required. You have to have certain product dimensions, performance requirements. You have to have installation instruction requirements and quality control requirements to get an AC 51. But you should be writing into your specifications that you would like products that meet the AC 51. Part of that AC 51 requirement is they have to take a piece of material and they have to run it through a minimum of 17 cycles of what you see there, because we want to make sure that products can withstand freeze and thaw requirements. Every fantastic piece of manufactured stone veneer that's out there that is from a national company and even some of the regional companies will have products that can withstand harsh freeze thaw conditions. We sell manufactured stone veneer all across the United States and Canada that will meet these requirements and will withstand snow, ice, rain, etc. So make sure that when you're out there specifying, include that AC 51 within your specifications. If you've got any questions about Chapter 2, please go ahead and enter those in, and we will get to those as quickly as we can at the end of the presentation. Chapter 3, let's talk a little bit about products and project tour and planning for your commercial projects. Manufactured stone veneer can be used in all different types of areas, commercially, residentially, from interiors to exteriors. This is a couple shots from some interior applications from a hotel and from the retail side. It can also be used on single family homes. So if you're an architect or a designer and you work on single family homes, manufactured stone veneer is an excellent choice for those projects, both in the East Coast and in the West Coast. Manufactured stone veneer allows you some opportunities to blend certain types of products together. You can blend manufactured stone veneer with stucco. You can also blend it with brick to create different types of looks. Works well for multifamily housing. Institutional. Historically, institutional has been more of a CMU or a brick, but a lot of newer buildings on some college campuses and high schools are starting to use more manufactured stone veneer specifically with student housing and some library type functions, labs, etc. Manufactured stone veneer works well for the hospitality industry, hotels, as well as restaurants. Signage. If all you do is a landscape architect with some signage, manufactured stone veneer works fantastic. Keep that in mind for your signage. Retail. Retail is an extremely large category nationwide. Works well for lots of different retail applications. Outdoor living. Outdoor living is a continually growing category for manufactured stone veneer and as a category in general. You can use manufactured stone veneer for fireplaces, fireplace surrounds. You can use it around your barbecues, both commercially and residentially. Let's talk a little bit about project planning. So when you're putting together your specifications and getting ready to publish those, you want to make sure that you've got certain information included within those specifications. It's a great idea, if you can, to include the contact information of your local representative for the particular manufactured stone that you are specifying. It's always a great idea, if you can, to include the SKU number, if you can get that, with regards to the specific manufactured stone that you're calling out. And of course, it's always great to call out both the manufacturer, the texture or the profile that you're after, and the specific color name so that it's clear what you're exactly wanting on your particular project. Also too, if we are going to blend something on site to create a different look, we want to make sure that you guys are including the appropriate ratios within your specifications. So it's important to have every detail that we possibly can in your specification so that we are creating the look that you want out on your job sites. Some other project planning things to keep in mind is when you're doing the individual stones here, and these are not the panelized system, these are individual stones, we can create different looks based on how tightly we install those, whether or not we use a standard joint or a wide joint, or sometimes we will overgrout that joint. So make sure that when you are specifying particular products that you are going to put the proper specifications in there so we know as an industry what it is you're after on your completed project. One other thing to keep in mind too, and that's becoming very popular, is grout color selection. So the grout color that you choose can also drastically change the way your manufactured stone veneer projects will look when they're complete. Also keep in mind that stone direction can also change the look of a project. So you can have a random placement of individual stones, or you can lay that exact same material horizontally and it creates a completely different look. This is all up to you guys to decide and make sure that you've included it within your specifications. When you're planning your projects, it's really important to include the types of mortars that you want. Right now, our requirement is to have a mortar that meets a minimum of the ASTM C270. That's your type N and your type S mortars. We're going to talk a little bit about mortars here in further detail, but we want to make sure that you're including ASTM C270 for all of your applications, or even better. The importance of a mock-up. When you guys are project planning and putting things together, we can't stress as manufacturer the importance of a mock-up. It can be a small mock-up or an extremely large mock-up, but it's a good idea to have one on the job site, even for large residential projects. It gives you an idea of the material, the terminations. It tells you where the grout is going to be, how thick that grout is going to be, the colors of the grouts. All of these things can be determined ahead of the project so that we know exactly what the end result is supposed to look like when it's on the job site, so that the general contractor or the builder knows exactly what the finished product is supposed to look like. It's a good idea to have the mock-up because we can look at the the penetrations, we can look at the terminations, we can look at flashings, we can check and see all of these things ahead of time so that we can have a proper installation. This is an example here of a job that probably didn't have a mock-up. It's got a bunch of small stones, vertical joints that don't line up. This would have been a completely different project if we had probably introduced a proper mock-up. So another thing when you're doing our specifications, and just for general knowledge for you guys in general, when we're project planning, we want to make sure that our stone, if it's going to be above grade, that we include a weep screed and a minimum of 4 inches to the grade, 2 inches above a paved surface. And we can get away with a 1/2 inch if the paved surface is supported by some type of foundation. More on that in a few minutes. We want to make sure that we've got these in the specifications so that we know that the end result is going to be per code. We want to make sure that we've got that clearance. This is an idea right here of a termination at a foundation wall or a bump wall where we can get away without having to take the stone above that 4 inch or 2 inch to grade, and it allow you to get that to the stone, to the concrete type look with your stone. Also, another thing to keep in mind when you're working on your project planning is to make sure that we're managing our moisture. And this is all done through our flashings and our wall penetrations and things like all of our detailed drawings that will help us with moisture management. We don't want moisture or water running behind the wall. We want that to be pushed out as best we can out over the stone. So what you see here at the bottom right picture, that's a picture of proper flashing with a sill, and it sticks out over the stone at least an inch, 1.5 inches, so that we've got the ability for the water to drain properly. These are things and small details that we should be looking at in our specifications and in our projects when we're working with manufactured stone. This is some detailed drawings that show the flashing that we need to have and the tie-ins on a particular project. It's an idea of how we're going to manage that moisture. All of these drawings can be found in that NCMA guide that I talked about earlier. So some other considerations when we're project planning. Sometimes people want to put sealers on stone. We don't recommend a sealer, but if you want to use a sealer, we need to make sure that it's the right sealer. And we recommend getting with your particular manufacturer, because some manufacturers won't let you seal their materials at all. Efflorescence. Certain products have efflorescence at certain times of the year because that moisture is pulling back through the wall and through the face of the stone and depositing that white stuff that you see on sometimes on the outside of brick and or manufactured stone veneer. Installers. Sometimes installers are very important to the project planning portion of a particular project, and then long-term maintenance, specifically in retail or national account situations. So when we're talking about those protective treatments, sometimes people want to use those because they can increase your resistance to stains, but they may also darken the color, and they may also slow the water penetration back out through the face of the stone. Our stone as manufacturers needs to be able to breathe on the wall so that when it gets wet, that moisture can evaporate back out through the front of that stone. Make sure on your projects that we're seeking out the most highly qualified installers that we can find. It's imperative that your installers follow the recommended manufacturer's installation instructions, and at a minimum, we need to make sure that we're following the C1780 ASTM. Those are not requirements, or excuse me, those are not recommendations. Those are requirements for having a successful installation out there. So take advantage of the manufacturer's resources that are out there. We talked about one earlier in the presentation where you can click a couple of links on some websites and get to the manufacturer's technical details and design aids. Some other considerations: manufactured stone veneer can be cleaned pretty easily. It's a relatively low maintenance product, especially for large commercial jobs. But if you have to clean it, we recommend cleaning it with a little bit of water and mild detergent and a soft bristle brush. We do not want you out there power washing manufactured stone veneer. It's not meant to be power washed. If you have any questions regarding Chapter 3, please enter those into our question section. Chapter 4, we're going to take a look at a few of the manufacturing stone veneer details that are more important to your particular projects with regards to commercial installations. So when we are talking about installations, we want to make sure that we're following the best practices. We talked about that NCMA installation guide. That is for all intents and purposes, the Bible of the manufactured stone veneer world. We want to make sure that we're following that ASTM C1780, especially for our manufactured stone veneer installations. With regards to mortars, mortars are becoming more and more important as we increase the size of our manufactured stone veneer. The type N and type S mortars that are out there sometimes are not adequately enough. They don't have the shear strength to hold some of those large format tiles. So type N, which meets the ASTM C270 specification for mortars, barely meets that specification with a shear strength of about 50 psi. When you move to a type S mortar in your specification, you're going to double that shear strength. And then when you move into a highly modified mortar, you're going to triple that shear strength, or sometimes even beyond that. So when you're designing your particular projects, please keep in mind some of the requirements that are out there for mortars may not be just barely meeting that minimum specification. We want to make sure that we meet it and possibly exceed the specification for mortars that are out there. So all of those can be found again in that NCMA guide. So I encourage you guys to download a copy of that for your files. When we talk about basic installation, there's some things that we need to follow, and that is again that ASTM C1780. We're going to have some type of sheathing on the back. We're going to have 2 layers of a weather resistant barrier. We're going to have our galvanized metal lath that's going to meet an ASTM C847 or an ASTM 1032 requirement. We're going to have mortar that meets that ASTM C270. Then we're going to apply our manufactured stone veneer to that, and then we're going to mortar that joint. This is a fairly typical wall detail that you might include in one of your drawings. Something that's not usually included in the drawings, but that is highly recommended and something for you guys to know when you're out on a job site and checking an installation, is that we need to run our metal lath in a particular fashion. We need to run it horizontally. We don't want to run it vertically. And we want to overlap our corners like you see in that picture by at least 12 inches so that we can tie into the framing. We also want to make sure that we're anchoring that metal lath 6 inches vertically and then every 16 inches on center into that particular metal or wood stud. So this is a pretty typical installation that you'd see on a corner, and one that you should find out on your job sites. We want to make sure that we're running that metal lath, like I mentioned, horizontally, which you'll see in the picture on the left. You do not want to run that vertically like you see on the right there, because that's when we run into problems. You've got spacing also in between those gaps. So your metal lath, it should feel smooth going up with you rub your hand over the top of it, and rough coming down because it's got those cups in there. Those cups are designed to hold our 1/2 inch layer of mortar. So weather considerations when we're out there installing. We want to make sure that when we're working in hot and dry climates that our scratch coat is misted with a fine spray of water. That's going to help our mortar not to flash off too quickly. And then in terms of cold weather, we want to make sure that we're installing our projects in temperatures that are not below freezing or very well close to it. So right around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe that translates over to about 4 degrees Celsius. So it just causes issues with our mortar. When we install our mortar, when you're out on a job site, or if you're taking a look and following up on a project, we want to make sure that we're using a full 1/2 inch coverage all the way around that stone, and then we're pressing that stone onto the wall and squeezing out the excess amongst the edges. A lot of times you'll see guys that are out there, and sometimes they take some shortcuts and they do the donut method, which is just putting some mortar around the outside edges of the material and pushing it up against the wall. That's not what you want to see. What you want to see is like the far left picture there. Mortar, after we're done installing, we're going to come back with our mortar. We're going to fill those joints in. This is a fantastic installation in terms of cold weather environments. It works really well to have particular projects out there where you've got them mortared in as opposed to a tight fit with a single stone. If we're going over concrete construction like a CMU, it's always a good idea, but not a requirement, to use the traditional metal lath, but it's a great idea to shoot the metal lath in there. That way we can minimize any cracking on the job. Cement board. If you're using cement board, you can use cement board. It's often used on commercial projects where it'll go up in terms of an installation faster. Sometimes we're using a water barrier that's a liquid applied, and cement board lends itself well to those particular applications. Make sure that it meets that ASTM C1325, that it's a true cement board and not the HardieBacker type board. Moisture control. We're going to make sure that we want to manage our moisture on the job site as well as we can. And we're moving into some newer systems with rain screens and some systems where the rain screen and the lath are all in one combination. So some of these rain screens are required in certain areas. Please be aware of that as you are specifying your projects. Once again, all this information can be found in our NCMA MSV installation guide. Great idea to download that. Chapter 4 questions, please enter those in. We're in the home stretch now. We've just got a couple of more minutes here. We're going to talk about large dimension stone veneer. When you're working with large dimension stone veneer, which is becoming more and more popular on job sites because it lends itself to a really modern look, is we want to make sure that we're following the manufacturer's recommended installation instructions. Almost every manufacturer out there that's producing large dimension stone veneer will have special instructions that the masons should be following, and those should also be included within your specifications. A couple examples here of some large dimensional stone veneer projects. Inside or outside, different installation requirements. Always best to get with your local vendor rep from the manufactured stone or the dealer or distributor that's representing those products, and make sure we're following all of the recommended manufacturer's installation instructions. So I hope this quick AIA presentation was helpful for you guys today.